a pro-gun control group is using footage of the attempted assassination of former President Reagan in an attempt to push for background checks. Why don't we take a look?
32 years ago this week, armed Secret Service agents couldn't protect Ronald Reagan from being shot by a disturbed man with a gun. But President Reagan believed something could have prevented the attack. 10 years later, he wrote that the assassination attempt might never have happened if a bill requiring background checks had been law in 1981. Tell the Republicans to join President Reagan in supporting tough, enforceable background checks. People like the one who shot Ronald Reagan shouldn't have access to a gun.
What I love about this is the reaction. So that's a perfectly logical ad. It's saying your God, Ronald Reagan, in Leviticus 12:10 said there should be background checks, okay? That's your demigod, and he said it, right? And remember, by the way, he got shot with a gun, right? And all the guns are, I mean, so you can't argue. It's an absolute stone-cold fact. So conservatives are outraged. They're like, how dare you? The Hill reports that they are saying that it's going to take a divisive debate and make it even more divisive. But why would it make it divisive? Shouldn't we come together around your God? Isn't Ronald Reagan right about everything? So, okay, let's unite around what Ronald Reagan said. We agree with you. Ronald Reagan was right on background checks. How is that divisive? And the fact is, they're like, damn it, we got busted on that one. So we will pretend, we will manufacture the outrage machine. How dare they use Reagan?
Well, apparently the NRA wasn't as powerful back then as it is now, because it's been able to totally take over the debate, at least since Sandy Hook. Apparently they weren't controlling the message that was coming out of the GOP back in the 80s, I guess.
You know what's interesting? George H.W. Bush left the NRA in the 1990s after the Oklahoma City bombing, because Wayne LaPierre, who was their vice president at the time, executive vice president, talked about, well, you know, the federal government and their jackbooted thugs. Even after Oklahoma City, after a guy who was, you know, anti-government came in and blew up a government building, killed, you know, all those people. And so Bush said, this is Bush Sr., obviously, so this NRA doesn't represent, I mean, they're radical and left. Now, if you bring that up, you're being divisive.
Well, apparently the presidency turns these conservatives liberal.
Yeah.
By becoming president, you actually turn. Reagan seems like a total flaming liberal in that his position was that now, when we look back. And so what does that say about where these conservatives are today? You know?
So two things about that. One is you're right, like once you're in the office and you see practically these extreme ideas, they don't work, you get shot. Right? Like Reagan. And you know, you lose all those people in Oklahoma City because of all that anti-government rhetoric. And so then as president, you say, hey, you know what? You might want to cool the extreme anti-government rhetoric, right? I'm not asking for that much. And the second part of it is, the spectrum, you're so right, Brian, has moved so far to the right that Reagan would have no prayer. I think I've convinced a lot of people that he has no prayer in a current Republican primary. Amnesty for illegal immigrants, raised taxes 11 times in favor of background checks, you know, gun control, negotiated with terrorists, ran from Lebanon, you know, arms for hostages. It's inconceivable. He would be laughed out of the room. But I actually think he would be laughed out of the room in a Democratic primary. Can you imagine a Democrat comes, he would be to the left of Kucinich on those issues, not on every issue, of course, but on those issues. I mean, if Kucinich came up in a primary debate and said, I'd like to give terrorist arms to trade it for our hostages, they'd be like, oh, you're immediately disqualified. They would take away his podium, right? And that's what Reagan did.